in his home country, but more than that, he's also a political person, a political commentator, or expert for that reason. And then he's done a lot. Just me going through his bio, I don't know where I will start and stop, but he's the host of an international affairs program on Priami
Primary, yes. Primary.
channel, and he's also the director of Eurasia Democracy Initiative, a New York-based NGO which seeks to educate the public about economic, political, and social dynamics in post-Soviet states. So recently, he has been a frequent commentator on Ukraine and Russia in leading international broadcast media, including BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera. What will interest you is that he is doing media tours in so many countries, 40 countries. That's his target. This so far is the 25th country. Kenya is the 25th country, and his target is to complete this media tours in 500 days. That's quite something. You're most welcome, Peter.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. So I'm curious about why are you doing the media tours before we get to what you're doing.
Well, it's been now since I've been on the road since September, 11 months. This is my 25th country. It's my 15th country in Africa. I started in early March, and I'm traveling slow, no plane ride. So I've come here from South Africa by land, 40,000 kilometers I've made so far through these countries, and I travel deep inside each country, deep into the sticks, as they say in the United States, the bush, right? So I visit people in different parts of the country. I go on, national broadcast TV. I speak with, radio reporters, TV newspapers to talk about the war in Ukraine, its implications for the world, but also it's a listening tour. Since I have, as you mentioned, a TV program in Ukraine, this is an opportunity to tell my audience about countries that most of them have never visited and never will. So I serve as a bridge, in a way, telling Africans my story of the story of the Ukrainian resistance in the last 3.5 years of this war, but also telling Ukrainians about Africans, what their concerns are, how they view this war, and how the war has affected them.
So you tell this on your program?
Yes.
Okay. So even while you're on tour,
while I'm traveling, I still file weekly dispatches.
Okay, that's quite interesting. I love your job.
It always seems more glamorous from the outside,
But there's a lot of work involved in it.
Yes.
Amazing. I've seen you in the different media houses, even here in Kenya, and as you've said, you're talking about the Ukraine war that has been there and what's happening. But what brought your interest into politics, and why do you feel important that the world knows what's happening in Ukraine and the repercussions of what's happening even here in Africa?
Well, the repercussions are pretty big, and that's you don't have to go far. People out in the fields, people living in big towns, small towns, people living subsistence, kind of hand to mouth livelihoods, of course, felt the effect of the war immediately when the prices of grain rose, the price of fuel rose. They've been telling me, like, Peter, this war could not have come at the worst moment. We went straight from COVID to this, right? A serious blow, especially to, once again, people who live under $1 a day. Some of those countries I visited, like Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, and Burundi. That's exactly, so some of the poorest countries in the world. And yes, people have felt the effects. That means less quality and less quantity nutrition for people, right? For children growing up. That will affect their, future prospects, right? That will affect their mental capacities, right? You need nutrients, you need proper food. So this just tells you, as blood is being shed in Ukraine and hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost in this war, and this destruction, unparalleled sort of destruction, continues in Ukraine. You see the aftershocks, the after effects, the ripple effects far and wide. And as I said, even as distant as Fiji, it's an island nation in the middle of South Pacific, and people were telling me how it has directly impacted their lives. It's just a kind of a showcase of how globalized the world is we're living in, and how such a war, and it's not just a regional conflict. I mean, right, it's a war between two white country somewhere in Eastern Europe, right? And that before this war, people thought we're one and the same, right? When they came out of the Soviet Union, whatever. Well, this war has actually brought it very close to home. People now know what Ukraine is, how it is different from Russia, what it's fighting for. Not everyone cares or supports Ukraine in Africa, I understand, but there's more sympathy for the Ukrainian cause here than actually I expected coming here.
Okay, that's quite something. And now, from all the things that you do, but before we even get to all the things that you do, for those that don't understand the background of what's happening between Ukraine and Russia, you know, the Soviet Union, and even we're talking about the NATO and what Russia is opposing and all that, and now that we're seeing, you know, the president of Russia and US coming together to talk. Now, what does all that mean? If you can summarize it to someone who's very green about this matter.
Well, it means that, you know, Donald Trump is eager to claim the laurels of a peacemaker. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants the big deal. As the artist of the deal, the guy who wrote this book, The Art of the Deal, he's being kind of, he's hurrying. He's in haste to get this deal concluded. And I think in this haste that we're seeing, a lot of mistakes are being made. A lot of misinterpretation is happening of Putin's intentions. For example, Putin has been talking and did talk in the Alaska summit that he wants to go straight to peace. Why bother with a ceasefire?
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like good on the face of it, and that's what the issue that the European leaders raised with Zelensky when Zelensky came to Washington following on that Alaska thing on Monday. And the German chancellor said, President Trump, let's first get this ceasefire. Why can't we engage in these negotiations with a ceasefire? Putin does not want that. When he talks about peace, he wants peace on Russia's conditions.
Okay.
And that means essentially loss of sovereignty by Ukraine, loss of its foreign policy control, a decrease, downsizing of its army to under 100,000 as compared to 1 million now of men and women under arms.
So they will still have control.
Yes, and so that's why he doesn't want ceasefire. He also sees that Russia is on the offensive. It's gobbling up more Ukrainian territory. He thinks that you know, in the worst case scenario, he'll just get more territory and will be back at the negotiating table sometime months down the road in a better negotiating position. But also he's after the bigger prize. He wants to control all of Ukraine. And he thinks that if he presses this advantage on the battlefield, the Ukrainian army may even collapse. I mean, he's got that in mind. If it collapses, then he'll be called in to restore order and control over all of Ukraine. He doesn't care about some land here and there. All this talk about land swap, you know, I think it's a red herring. It's beside the point. Putin will use all these things as tactical means to gain time for himself. You know, while there's this, you know, appearance of goodwill and negotiating, he's still after his goal. That's why bombs and drones are still raining down on Ukrainian cities. Even after this Alaska summit, you would think he would exhibit some goodwill and kind of you know, slow down on that score. No, this thing, you know, it's not just the, you know, the front lines, but it's terror in the skies against civilians. No Ukrainian city or town is invulnerable to that. Russia's ballistic missiles reach far and wide. They reach far beyond Ukraine. So everyone is vulnerable. A whole nation of 35 million people now have been living in this state of terror all these years. So imagine the kind of new normal that we're living in Ukraine.
I mean, that's unfortunate, and it's definitely not a good place to be in as a country.
No.
And we're praying for Ukraine.
Thank
you. What is it about NATO that Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be part of it?
Yeah, that's an argument that is often used here in Africa. But you know, when Russia promotes its narratives, that's the one argument it uses. Even though now you have Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, say that no, we're here really to protect the Russian speakers of Ukraine. I don't think they needed protection. I mean, I'm a Russian speaker from the east of Ukraine, so I know of what I speak.
Okay.
And it just tells you that all these theories, all these arguments have been made for different audiences to conceal the neo-imperialist goals that Russia is pursuing, trying to bring back Ukraine under its orbit of influence, right? But the NATO thing is also, I think, a red herring. NATO actually, in fact, Donald Trump has already told Putin that, okay, Vlad, you don't want Ukraine in NATO, it won't be in NATO. So why hasn't he stopped the war if he got what he wanted, right?
Exactly.
There's many things to say here. And also to say that up until 2014, the first hostilities of Russia and the takeover of the Crimea, remember when it all started, majorities of Ukrainians told pollsters that they did not want to be members of NATO. So it was Putin's hostility and this anti-Ukraine hysteria that it was whipped up in Russian media all these years leading up to the war that caused Ukrainians to want to join NATO. And if he wanted to avoid that scenario, NATO's expansion, that is precisely his actions in Ukraine that achieved the opposite result. 2 new members as a result of Putin's aggression joined NATO, Sweden and Finland.
Exactly. Okay. I hear you, and I know that there's a lot, that's a whole wide topic. But now on to you, at a personal level, you wear many hats. You're the director of Eurasia Democracy Initiative, you're an international commentator, political commentator, and you're a TV host, right? So which role has defined you the most and why?
Well, I think, I wear many different hats, and I'm also a Ukrainian American. So I divide my time between Kiev as much as I can. Of course, it's in New York. It's not easy to leave Ukraine these days. Ukraine has been a country without airports since the planes have been grounded. So no civilian aircraft has been in Ukraine's skies since February 24, 2022. Imagine. You have to leave, you have to go to Poland on an overnight train, and from Poland you can fly. It's just to tell you how it, people travel. Majority of Ukrainian men are not able, of draftable age, from 18 to 61, are not allowed to travel outside other than for a special reason. So we're a country under siege, So I divide my time. I'm a frequent commentator for international media on Ukraine, of course. I'm not a journalist by training. I don't consider myself a journalist. I'm just a personality who has a TV show.
Okay.
And I've kind of sort of assumed this, identity, but I'm more of a commentator. I also dabble in some writing. I've published a few books, including a children's book in Ukraine. And so, and I hope to write a book based on my travels when I return.
Amazing. Definitely a book I would want to read because
Thank you.
it has to have a lot of information.
That's why all this information, like they're sitting down and whittling it down to something digestible and meaningful and into a coherent narrative. That's the hardest part, right? It's not just about putting it all together and throwing it in one pile. It's about one kind of narrative line, or maybe several, but they have to be kind of tied together, gel.
Okay.
But that's the craft of a writer. Maybe I'll have to learn that.
He'll get to that.
Yeah.
That's really fine. From all your travels, what has been that one recurring question that people have been asking about, what you've been talking about, the war, what has been
very good question, because a lot of times people when they hear I'm from Ukraine, first of all, they're surprised that someone would travel outside of Ukraine. It's no longer, the vast majority of people know what Ukraine is, and they don't say, is it the same as Russia? This is a question you may have gotten 5, 6, 7 years ago. No one does that anymore. They know the difference. But a lot of time people will ask me, is the war still going on? Which is, then you have to tell them it's not just going on, it's worse than ever. It's escalated. But that's the sort of a case point in human psychology. People kind of switch off. People have fatigue about conflicts. They want new things to watch and to follow. Of course, the Israel-Gaza situation, followed by the Israel-Iran confrontation. That's sort of swooped in, and that deflected some of the attention from the Ukraine war, which is dangerous, of course. Which is dangerous because Ukraine needs all the sympathy it can muster, all the help it can get. The war didn't go anywhere else, and the stakes in this war are as high as ever. And that's why this incredibly high-level, very unprecedented delegation that accompanied Zelensky to Washington. You have the who is who. You have 5 heads of state. You had Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. You had Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commissioner, because they understand the stakes of this war, what it would mean for Europe, the Western world, if Ukraine falls in this war.
Okay. So there's still a lot of weight to this war, as much as there's a lot happening in the world, and the story has deflected to what's happening in Israel and all that. But it's good to know. Now, what is it that you do at your NGO? Because that's an area we've not touched on. Tell us a little bit.
The
about
NGO
that.
I set it up in 2008, and that's to promote. I mean, it's a lofty kind of sounding mission statement, right? To promote human rights and democracy in countries of the former Soviet Union. There's been a lot of cynicism about, lately, especially with the coming return to power of the current American president, about liberal democratic values, about democracy, right? There's a lot of revisionism going on right now. That may explain partly the affinity between the American and Russian presidents. We may not be living in the same world. I mean, we're not, right? There's a challenge to the international world order, the post-World War order. And so there's cynicism about democracy and human rights, etc. Yet I'm still a believer in these values as someone who left Ukraine early in 1994 and I lived in America for a couple of decades before I returned to Ukraine. Now I divide my time. I know the benefits of a liberal democratic regime. I know what it is like to live in a society that respects human rights, that, where you cannot be arbitrarily detained, tortured, things that happen throughout the world. And I'm afraid that, it's easy to lose that. Even in a country, in an established democracy like America, the world's, one of the world's oldest democracies, we're seeing how institutions are weaker than we think, and how it is much easier to destroy them than to ever rebuild them again.
Okay. From all this, I'm getting the importance of democracy and even one person's voice. Like you have been a voice to what is happening to Ukraine and all that. In Africa, in as much there also was happening in Congo, we've had a lot happening there. In Kenya, we've had our own internal wars. Then what would you say to the citizens themselves? Like, what role do we have to play in making sure that we are not divided, that we grow? And I don't know, what do you feel like we have a role in what's happening even in the European countries? Because, Africa is not as highly regarded as the European countries. Do we have anything,
Yeah, of course. Of course, everyone has agency, so to speak, right? Everyone matters. We've seen how the youth of Kenya, we've been watching it from afar, has been restless, right? And there's been turbulence in this country, and yet somehow African countries, to me, remain kind of sane in many ways, right? Maybe even saner, the politics here, as maybe ironic as it may sound to you, than what we're seeing in Europe, right? There's a lot of turbulence in Western democracies. All of a sudden, soon I think African countries, some of them at least, will be in a position to teach and preach values of a stable democracy to Europeans, where, like I said, it's all under question now. My appeal is that, for people to treasure what they have. Like you said, Kenya is still largely a peaceful country compared to what's going on elsewhere. To treasure your democracy, protect it, it's not take it for granted. It's much easier to ruin it than to have it, to restore it. And you see that there's also a generational issue. People like the Gen X here, they may view these old institutions as obsolete and they want something else, but they have to understand that, there are lessons of history. I encourage them to learn history. I encourage them to see what happens when demagogues come to power, right? When populism reigns supreme, that leads to greater wars, longer lasting wars. We've been through it before, World War I, World War II, etc. Let reason prevail. Change, of course, is a part of life, but not all change is good, not all change is for the better. Disruption can be good, but it can also be difficult and hard and disruptive.
Yeah.
So be careful, treasure your institutions, and strive to, like you said, stay united, and work for the better of the whole country.
Okay, that's a good message right there. Now, what role, as we even come to a close of this conversation, as we look to wrapping up, what role does NGOs like yours, the Eurasia Democracy Initiative, now play in countering authoritarian narratives and even strengthening democracy today? We all have to chip in and help what we can. I think I'm serving. I don't want to
pat myself on the back, but I just picked up and I went and decided to hear the voice, the calling. I felt like this was my natural next step in my own evolution. This is a kind of sacrifice, financially speaking. I don't receive funding from the government. I don't represent the government.
Okay.
It's a largely self-funded trip. That is once again giving me, encouraging me to continue this. This is a way to re-engage with yourself, to test your powers of endurance. I've been acting as a sort of ambassador at large, a self-appointed ambassador at large for Ukraine. And I believe it's been a very satisfying trip. It's been very labor-intensive, of course, travel-intensive. But this is the trip of a lifetime. There comes that moment when you just heed that voice, that calling, and you don't be afraid and go and do it.
And it just works out as you go along
Yes,
the way. Things
yes.
just fall into place. Everything
Yes,
works.
Lord willing, it does.
Okay. And, looking at everything that's happening, maybe the conflicts, because you've been talking about, how do you find a balance and, look forward to something good, even between all that wars and all that?
Well, that's precisely that's is also a way to just take a breather, to be productive elsewhere. I felt like, I may have outlived my usefulness in Ukraine. At that moment, I wanted to see if I could, help build some bridges of communication between Ukraine and distant parts of the globe, that also allows me to, that necessary breathing space to once again to get back in touch with my own creative juices, so to speak.
All right, that's interesting. And on your 25th country, looking at all the countries that you've visited, what has left a lasting impression on you, especially on how you view maybe humanity or conflict?
Well, I mean, we all, we may have different skin color, but we all bleed the same red, right? There's much more commonality in the countries that I visit. Countries also are never as scary as they are painted out to be. Like a country like Burundi is poor that people told me never to go. It's so scary, you'll be robbed. Don't even think about crossing borders by land in Africa. There will be extorting bribes. There will be like kidnapping, all these things. None of it has happened, It's never as scary. If you keep your head about you, you do things, you don't, do obvious, stupid things. Don't walk around with your phone out in the middle of a dangerous city or whatever. Just do what's reasonable. Use your logic, your judgment. You'll be fine. And I've had nothing but good vibes throughout this trip. I'm still here.
Yeah.
Burundi, as poor as it is, it was a lovely country. I enjoyed it. Malawi, poor country. Some of these poor countries are some of the most fun to travel in.
Okay.
People are yearning to know about who you are, where you came from, and I'm always happy to share my story and the story of my people.
Okay. What is it that you've loved about Kenya so far?
Well, Kenya is one of the more developed, countries that I visited. Very, there's a lot of more efficient in many ways. You still have some of the comforts we're used to in the West. Good food, good products, to just put it bluntly, right? Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Mombasa because, and that's that's the positive side of my trip. I'll get to do that again, some other time.
When you come
it's
back.
just that I've been here 5 days in Nairobi and it's been packed. I've had a lot of media engagements. It's very satisfactory, the sort of reception that I've received here.
Ah, absolutely amazing. So it's confirmed that Kenya is one of the developed countries in Africa. That's something to be proud of.
Well, yes.
Really. And now what lessons, finally, what lessons should the global community take from from the Ukraine's experience about democracy and resilience in the 21st century?
Well, the main lesson is that, international law is worth fighting for. Once again, these ideals, international law, Declaration for Human Rights, United Nations, they may sound like some, old school values and institutions, but that's all we have. That's the closest we have to a world government, Without that, it'll be a chaotic, dog-eat-dog world. And that's exactly what the stakes are in this war. If Ukraine is allowed to fall in this war, it will set off a really bad precedent for the rest of the world, including Africa. The potential for inter-ethnic and border disputes, etc., is simply too much, too grave to even think about. That's why I think it's important to fight for these principles. And Ukraine serves as an example, I think, of heroism, how it's sometimes time comes and it's worth to even shed blood for some values. You know, something a lot of the countries have sort of forgotten, and this is a very fresh, necessary reminder.
Okay, a very great reminder there. What's next for you in media and advocacy?
Well, I'm leaving Kenya tomorrow, you know, and I'm flying off to like, you know, island nations like in the Indian Ocean. I'm going to Madagascar, Mauritius, etc. Then I'm back to the continent, and I'll continue my trip north, Ethiopia, elsewhere, and I will see where I land. You know, maybe I'll just never stop. I'll just keep going and going and do the full circle around Africa.
Okay, wonderful. You should do it around Africa, and then you give us, you put more in the book.
Always happy to stay in touch with you guys by Zoom. You know, always happy to be in contact.
Absolutely, we'd love that, so that we can get more information with you. We can always connect here on TV and all that. So where can people get you if they want to follow your work?
Just my Peter Zalmayev, you know, Zalmayev. Maybe you can put it up on the screen. Yeah. They can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all this stuff.
And Peter Zalmayev.
Yeah, Peter Zalmayev. Yeah.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank
Peter.
you. I wanted to leave you with a little essay I wrote about at the beginning of the war, and a little bracelet of Ukraine with our coat of arms, the trident, and the colors of the flag. This is a keepsake for you.
This is so nice of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I just got a gift today. Who thought I would be leaving the show with something? Thank you very much for this and for your time and the insights that you've given. We hope to have you even more on Zoom, connecting online. As you've said, the world is a global village. So I hope you've enjoyed this particular interview. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back with Anna to close it up for you. So stay with us.